It really does come down to chasing the dollar and my natural anxiety and OCD that I have. Once I started working for myself, there was a lot of people who didn't pay their bills. So on paper, although I made good money, I was still just waiting to get paid so I can pay my bills, waiting to get paid so I can pay my bills. And that's so there was a lot of good times, obviously, but there was just a lot of worrying about making ends meet.
Yeah, because on the image of an attorney is
Yeah.
so nice on the outside.
Right.
You get to do things, the entire family looks so good, but only we know what's inside, or more to say, what's not inside. Hello, welcome back. I'm Andreea Parc.
And I'm Dumitru.
And this is a Live Again podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Today we have with us a great friend, very close to my heart, Jodi Gagne. I'm so emotional now, to say the least, because we met in Danbury. Jodi is a former attorney as well. I'm so happy that we get to do this together. Thank you so much for being here with us.
I'm happy about it too. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, that's amazing that I mentioned this in a previous podcast, that when we were in Danbury, calculated when I was writing my book, I calculated that out of 180 people between 2019 and 2021, they were 12 attorneys.
Wow, I didn't realize there were that many.
Yeah. And I realized that it's a huge percentage of women attorneys, and I started to do some research. Why is that? And now the work that I'm doing is with attorneys, especially in the first 10 years of practice, because somehow the research says that attorneys get in trouble in the first 10 years of practice.
Really? I was not in the first 10 years of practice, but...
So you are the exception that confirms the rule. Yeah, so let's start from the beginning. So what can you tell us about your legal practice? What was if your practice was channeled on a single type of practice, and how did you feel back then?
Yeah. Well, I graduated from UCLA School of Law in 2000, and I worked for firms at first, and then I got pregnant with my daughter. She was born in 06, and I realized I didn't want to go back to working for somebody else. I was working, 12, 14 hours a day. I wanted to see my daughter grow up. So I started working for myself at that point in time. And I was already doing what's called special public defender work. So the public defender's office gives appellate briefs, that what I was doing to private attorneys when they have a conflict or they have too many cases. So I was already doing appellate work for the public defender's office, and I just started doing that full time.
So you were still in California?
No, I'm sorry. Here in Connecticut. I moved back to Connecticut because I knew I wanted to have a family and I wanted to be around but so after practicing in California for about a year, I'm back in my home state of Connecticut, and next year I'll be moving back to California, but that's a different story. So I started doing criminal law, appellate work, and then I transitioned to doing trial work as well. And then I started doing federal criminal law, and I was basically the breadwinner for the family. When I had children, my husband was a stay-at-home dad, and he watched the kids. And so earning the money was always on my shoulders, which gave me anxiety. I already have anxiety, which was even made it worse, frankly. And being without a steady paycheck from a law firm, because I was working for myself, I was at the mercy of people who paid their bills. And so that gave me more anxiety. So as my children got a little older, they went to school, I also transitioned to doing conservator work. So I became a conservator for people who needed for the person or for the estate. And then I hired my husband to work with me to help me with those clients. And so that eventually...
Sorry to interrupt. That's a sort of trustee?
Sort of, yeah. our clients were conserved by the state because they couldn't take care of themselves. Either they were too old or there was something mentally wrong with them. So I was either in charge of their person, making medical decisions for them, and or in charge of their estate if they had money. So I had to pay their bills for them and make sure they had
Appointed by the
apartments.
state.
Yes, I was paid for by the state. So that having the anxiety, I think, is what eventually led to my downfall. I had a client who had a lot of money in the bank, and I wanted to invest it for him so it could help last beyond him paying the nursing home $14,000 a month, which is ridiculous. So I invested that money. I should have known what I was doing was wrong, but I invested at least a portion of it in a business owned by my husband. So that eventually led the FBI to investigate and bring charges against me. I never thought what I was doing was illegal, although I should have known it was unethical and I shouldn't have been allowed to do that. But what I did do also, because of the anxiety, is I did overbill my clients. So if work took me, say, 2.4 hours to do, maybe I billed 2.7, and eventually that much added up along the lines. So I know that what I did was wrong, and I accepted responsibility for it and eventually pled guilty.
Yeah. Also, because you were doing criminal law and you knew the difference between choosing to go to trial and choosing to plea.
Yeah, and not the FBI, the U.S. attorney said if I pled guilty, there would be one defendant, and if I didn't plead guilty, there'd be two. So I knew that they would be bringing charges against my husband as well, since it was involved with his business, and I have children, and that wasn't an option. So I pled guilty.
Yeah, I understand. And we spoke about the research that attorneys in general get into trouble in the first 10 years of practice.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in your career did this happen to you?
That I got into trouble? Let's see. I graduated in 2000. I started working for myself in 2006, and the FBI knocked on my door in 2017. So 17 years, I guess. And I was working for myself for 11.
Yeah. So throughout this time, how can you describe the feeling that you had in this 17 years as an attorney?
You know, it really does come down to chasing the dollar and my natural anxiety and OCD that I have. Once I started working for myself, there was a lot of people who didn't pay their bills. So on paper, although I made good money, I was still just waiting to get paid so I can pay my bills, waiting to get paid so I can pay my bills. And so there was a lot of good times, obviously, but there was just a lot of worrying about making ends meet.
Yeah. Because on the image of an attorney is so nice on the outside.
Right.
You get to do things, children are in good schools, and the entire family looks so good. But only we know what's inside, or more to say, what's not inside.
Right.
I felt empty, and the clients that I'm working with right now, they feel the same thing. Burnout, and emptiness, and it's the image that we show on the outside. It's not what's inside.
Absolutely. You're highly educated, you have a good practice going, and along with that comes, frankly, a lot of bills. You know, I had an office to take care of, I had people to pay, and when my clients don't pay their bills, that all falls on me. And so there's a lot that goes with it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that we were talking to a very good friend of ours who's not an attorney, but also a professional. And she said that when she started her practice, she did a market research, she called it. And then she put down on paper if she would have a large office with employees and with a certain amount of clients coming in. And then on the other side, working by herself without an office, just with a computer from home. At the end of the month, if she would cross the line, the totals between the expenses and the money coming in for her would be the same thing.
Right.
And I was thinking, why?
Because we were trying to talk about my brand and how to, because I'm at that point where I'm sort of in between positions and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And, you know, she was telling me this, and these were thoughts that I already had, that because I keep trying to hire people but as she said, it's the same.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So you have to do what's right for you, what makes you happy. It makes me happy. As you can see, I'm in my home right now. I work from home and I love it. I don't want to go to work for anybody else again. I don't want to have an office again. I just want to be at home.
Yeah. And that's super interesting that in my work, I see this mistake, the same mistake that I've made, done by a lot of young attorneys. That is that image that we should have an office, that people should see us, that we're successful. Who's
Yes.
gonna come to me if I work from home?
Exactly.
Things like that, which is not always the truth. It's always in our mind.
Yes, especially as lawyers, frankly, when you graduate from that and get that degree and you feel like you should be up here, so you have to portray yourself as being up there, even if it's not true.
And that makes me think of Saul Goodman, if you know Better Call Saul.
I do.
Where
Loved it.
he had this big office with this big, like, inflatable thing on top, and people were coming in, but in reality, he was living out of the office because he couldn't pay for his own apartment.
Right.
So in the back, he had just like a bed, a cot, and it was like really a mess. And in the front, he would like put on his suit and he would go out and sit with the clients.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, now it's funny for us and we laugh about it, but if somebody would have told me this back then, I would have probably taken it as an offense. Because I was so into my image that I could not have a different perspective. So let me ask you, were there any red flags? Would your case could have been prevented?
Yeah, definitely. If I had just stuck to criminal law and just represented my clients, yeah, none of that would have happened. But I branched out into an area that I wasn't entirely familiar with, conservator work, and I let my anxiety about money cloud my judgment. And I realize now that I don't want anything to do with that. Right now, what I do is I research and write for other people. And I've always been very good at it, and I love my job. I love putting together motions and briefs. So I still use my legal knowledge and my legal education.
Yeah.
But I don't deal with anybody's money. I write documents, people pay me, and that's it.
Yeah. So how did you feel when you had to face the consequences of your actions?
Yeah, because I had been through the system, being in criminal law, I did trial work, I did federal trial work. I knew everything that was coming, and it scared me very much. When they first knocked on my door, the FBI, and I realized what was happening or going to happen, it was the worst time of my life, because I knew that once the feds sink their teeth into you, you're done, for the most part. I mean, they don't win every case, but the vast majority. So I was just hoping for a good judge, and being familiar with the judges in the Connecticut court system, I knew that when I was assigned to the judge that I was assigned to, I was not in a good position. The judge that I got, her name was, can I say it? Her name, she's not even practicing anymore. Her name was Vanessa Bryant. And Judge Bryant did not come from a criminal background, but she was a criminal judge in the District of Connecticut. And if you ask anybody on the defense bar in Connecticut, their answers are always going to be the same. She just doesn't get it. She didn't, I don't know if she wasn't smart enough to understand what was happening. She didn't care to figure out what was happening. But every defense attorney in the state of Connecticut that practices in federal court does not like Judge Bryant. And that's who I got, unfortunately. And I had been before her in court before, so she knew who I was. And she was dead set against in favor of making me an example.
Yeah, that's...
So although other attorneys who have gotten in trouble within this state received sentences of like 12 months or 24 months, I was sentenced to 46 months.
But isn't that a conflict of interest?
No, not really. I mean, we weren't friends. So just because she knew me.
I mean, if you're a juror and you know somebody or you know of somebody in the case, it's a conflict of interest. But if the judge knows about you, that's not a conflict of interest?
No, because if you were an attorney and you practiced in front of that particular judge...
Yeah, but the judge still knows you.
Right.
And still has
Right, but the
I can
case
still make an opinion, which is where the conflict of interest comes in.
Yeah, but the jurisdiction is to be prosecuted is in that particular court, and if she practiced in that court, most likely she would know all the judges, right?
Yeah, at least most of them. Yeah.
Even if you would ask to change the judge, I don't think that would have been possible.
Right. That's not
right
to me.
I don't disagree with you, but if we had made a motion to change the judges, that would have been denied, and it probably would have been even worse for me, frankly.
Yeah. Oh my God. But did you have any hint that this is coming, or just FBI one day knocked on your door?
Yeah, well, when I used my client's money to invest in a business for my husband, I was appointed to that case by the probate court. The probate court removed me from the case when they found out, and another attorney took it over. He had put a grievance in against me. And so I had a feeling that he was somehow in contact with the FBI.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew it was coming, but it was still just a shock. Frankly, I thought it was going to be state charges, but when I found out it was federal charges, state charges I could have dealt with, but federal.
Why federal? Because it was an over crossing state lines money, or it was just banking?
It was banking, but they charged me with mail fraud of all weird things.
That's why
it should have been wire fraud. It should have been bank fraud, but it wasn't.
Yeah, they made it federal.
Yeah, they made it federal. And they can do what they want to do.
Well, this leads to the conversation of, right? Because ultimately, you're still kind of a small fish.
Well, very small. Yes.
Pond.
Yep.
What?
Right. Yeah, my restitution was $116,000, even though I could get into why that shouldn't be that much. When you're talking about, I had clients who had like $24 million in fraud. I had another attorney friend who was $600,000, got arrested for fraud in the federal system. He got 30 days. And I was a sixth of that, and I got 46 months. So it really just depends on what judge you get and where they want to put you.
Yeah, and the representation, the attorneys that represent you.
Yeah, it is. I had a friend of mine, I know, of course, a lot of the Connecticut Defense Bar. A friend of mine was representing me, and he didn't do a very good job.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we attorneys are kept as example.
Yes.
And although if we would not have been attorneys, we probably have received a lower sentence. But because we are attorneys, we need to be examples for others.
Yes.
That,
And I feel we were treated that way in Danbury as well, because we were educated and we had every opportunity to succeed, and we didn't. I feel like the people that were in charge of the camp treated us even worse because of that privilege that we had.
Yeah. I mean, it was so miserable that I can't even say that I was treated differently, than somebody else. It was I somehow blocked everything around. And I was in my head with the nature and this and that. I just didn't want to give more energy to what was happening than I needed to. I mean, give it minimum energy.
Right.
Importance for that.
It was very important to stay focused, to stay positive. And that's why I so enjoyed taking the meditation class that you offered there. And I use that even today. I still meditate. I still do the guided meditation and focus and calm myself in the same ways that you taught us to do when we were in Danbury.
I'm happy. And now, from your experience, what legal traps or ethical blinds would you advise attorneys to be aware of?
I think my biggest downfall is the overbilling. And I think that started really when I first started in law. I worked for big firms who didn't care if you billed 10 hours for a 7-hour job, because they just billed the client more and they made more money off of what you were doing. So that was like a slippery slope, that it didn't matter how many hours I billed because clients were going to pay for it. And I think if I had to tell anybody something starting off, is just stay as honest as you can, because this is your livelihood. This is what you worked for so hard to get. Don't throw it away for something that's stupid.
And it could be for anybody, because a lot of people bill based on hours, not just attorneys.
Right.
So that's a pretty...
Right, but because we are held at a higher standard...
That's true.
Yeah.
Going back to the same conversation, it's...
Yeah.
Because let's say that you make a dress and you know it's worth, I don't know, $300, but you charge $500. You're not going to get in trouble for that.
That's true.
But we do.
Yeah. That's let the market decide what your dress is worth. And that is.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you work on appellate briefs right now. So have you returned to law in any way, or what do you do?
I don't just do appellate briefs. I do anything, really. I work for pro ses or attorneys all across the country who need something written. I have several attorney clients who just don't have time to write their own motions or briefs, and they have something and they have me do it for them. And I have pro ses who know what they want to say, but they don't know the proper format to put it in.
Yeah.
And so they hire me and I get it done for them. And I love it. I find work over the internet through various websites and my own website. And I stayed busy. I've been doing this just on my own now for about 2.5 years, and I've stayed busy the whole time, which makes me happy. I've been disbarred in Connecticut until 2031, but like I said, I plan on moving to California next year. Now, I was on the California bar, and they disbarred me until 2027. So about 6 months after I get there, I can start to try to get my license back. And so that's what I plan on doing.
Yeah. But how many years? It's Connecticut.
12 years. It was they disbarred me in 19, so I could get it back in 2031. But I'm done with Connecticut.
New York is 7 years.
Is it? Oh, it's 5 years in California. So they eventually disbarred me in 22, which is why I can get it back in 27.
Yeah. I'm eligible to reapply next year, 2026. Yeah.
I don't need my license for what I'm doing, and I'm not planning on stopping what I'm doing. I like it, but I would like it back just because I work so hard for it. And I would like to take on appellate clients again. I really enjoy appeals very much.
That's so interesting. What if you would talk to a room full of whatever, first-year attorneys or in the first 10 years? Yeah. What words of encouragement? Because we only spoke about bad things until now. Would you encourage an attorney, a young attorney? I mean, young in the practice of law.
Yeah. Well, I've known a lot of attorneys who just were not happy with what they did. And so I would say pick an area of law that you enjoy doing. And like I said, for me, it's research and writing. I know a lot of attorneys don't like that, but I love it and I'm good at it. So I would say to them, don't just do something because you have to pay the bills or you think you have to. Do something that you really enjoy doing every day. When I worked for large firms, I always said that the only good thing about my job was the paycheck I got every 2 weeks. I hated everything I did. And so if I could go back, I wouldn't work for them because life's too short to be unhappy in the job that you pick.
Well, the thing with lawyers is the vast majority of lawyers that we've spoken to have said they did not go into law because they wanted to. They went into law because they come from a long line of lawyers and their parents wanted them to be lawyers and that's why they went into law, or it was just the easiest route and that's why they went in because being a doctor was too hard, so they just went into law. So it kind of, the stories that we've heard are people they didn't want to be lawyers and they just kind of fell into it.
Interesting.
And it's so nice to hear of somebody who genuinely wanted to do it.
Yeah,
and who
I did.
genuinely likes it.
Yeah.
And who is making the best out of what they're doing.
That's what I try. I came from, my parents were both factory workers. And so when I was younger, there was always, one of them was getting laid off from something because work slowed down. And I always did very well in school. So I thought, okay, I could be a professional. And I wasn't really geared towards doctor because I didn't like science that much, but I did like social studies. I liked the law. So that's why I decided to do that, because I knew I could, and I knew I wanted a job that could sustain me. Unfortunately, I made the mistakes that I did, but I enjoy what I do. And so when I got out of Danbury and I thought about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, there was nothing else that I wanted to do. So that's why I started to research and write for others. And then I decided to start my own practice doing that. And I love it.
Have you ever thought about writing a book?
I have an interesting story. um,
Yeah.
so it's a possibility in the future.
Yeah. I mean, you can write even novels and
Yeah,
nonfiction. You can do it all. I mean, writing is such a broad, you can do so much with writing.
Yeah, that's true.
and part of what we're doing is constructive escape movement, and we work with attorneys and professionals to find constructive ways of not get to the burnout that we did and make mistakes, right? So a lot of them choose writing
Mm. As an outlet.
as an outlet.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think it's the easiest thing to do, right? Because you don't need any tools. If you paint,
Yeah.
you need colors and brushes and canvases and whatever. If you do fashion, you need a sewing machine and materials and whatever else. I think it's the most easy to just sit down, pen and paper or laptop or whatever, and just do it.
And it's very easy for somebody who is very introverted to write about their feelings instead of speaking to somebody. So it's easier for them.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about.
So now that we're approaching the end, it's the only question that is the same for all the podcasts, and that is, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
Singing. Yeah, I don't have to think about that one. I love to sing. I sing everywhere. I am in a few groups where I get to sing in public. I sang last night, as a matter of fact. Our group did the national anthem at a local baseball game. So, that's what I love to do.
And I know your children are also very good because I'm
Yes, they are.
following you on the social media.
Yes, they chose not to go the singing route, but they love acting, and they can sing. They just choose not to. But yes, my daughter, she dances, and she's going to school right now for theater studies and dance. And my son is still in high school, and he does theater in school. He's the best.
Yeah.
And so next year when he graduates, that's why we're moving out to Los Angeles, because they both want to be in the entertainment industry. And they're going to transfer to New York Film Academy, which is in Burbank, California, which is right across the street from all the studios in Universal City. And so that's where they want to be. And so
And you
since I
can
live
be
there
their
already,
attorney.
what?
And you can be their attorney.
Right. I'll be their manager. I'm good at organizing things.
Yeah. Writing the contracts and yeah.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Unfortunately, I know how to do that.
It's really great that you're supporting them in being an artist. Because exactly as I was saying, a lot of attorneys that we speak with, they say, oh, my parents were attorneys and that's just what they wanted me to do. So it's really nice that you're not forcing that on them either.
Yeah. No, they're way too creative for me. I am much more left brain. I'm logical thinker. They're right brain. And so they got to do what's best for them, most definitely.
The same with her, because I wanted to be an artist and my dad said no.
Off the table.
No, you're going to law school.
Oh, man. No, I have a lot of people in my life who ask me, oh, what do the kids want to do? And I tell them they want to be in the entertainment industry. And then the second question is, well, what's the backup plan? So there's no backup plan. You this is what you want to do. You put everything you have into that. Because if you have a backup plan, that's what you're going to fall back on. And nobody said to me when I said I'm going to be a lawyer, oh, what's your backup plan? That just doesn't make any sense to me. This is what you want to do. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah, there is no plan B.
No, that's right.
Because plan A is not going to fail.
That's right. As long as you don't let it. you put all your effort and energy into something, you're going to do what you want to do.
It's going to work. Yeah. Yeah. One way or another is definitely going to work.
Yeah.
Jodi, thank you so much for being
Well, thank you for having me.
Our listeners, thank you very much for listening. And for more guests and conversations, please subscribe and follow us. We'll see you next week.